Welcome to a new podcast episode of What's Hot in the Bookstore with Megan Riley.
And Rain Brooks.
It's great to be back with you all.
It really is. And today, Megan, we are diving deep into, well, what's probably one of the most talked about, most anticipated memoirs hitting the shelves this season.
Absolutely. We're focusing today giving you a really thorough preview and analysis of Awake, a memoir by Jen Hatmaker. Now, if you follow American culture, faith writing, that kind of thing, you probably know her name.
Oh, for sure.
She's known for this, specific brand of honesty, a bit of humor, too. But this book, this sounds like something else entirely. It's this unprecedented look into, well, the total collapse and then the rebuilding of her life.
Right. And our mission here really is to guide you through what sounds like a truly profound personal crisis. We're talking loss, major upheaval, and then that slow, really hard process of putting things back together.
Yeah, and it's important to stress this isn't framed as like a how-to guide, is it?
No, not at all. It's not a self-help manual with easy steps. What Awake promises is a raw, really unflinching look at what happens when the absolute foundations of a very public life just shatter.
It sounds incredibly brave, honestly.
It really does. Coming from one of the most visible voices in American media and, faith circles, she's putting it all out there.
That promise of rawness, I think that's what makes it so compelling. If our read on the source material is right, this deep dive should show you why this book is hitting such a nerve, why it resonates so much with anyone who's ever navigated one of those big, life-altering moments.
Facing the unimaginable, basically,
Yeah.
and doing it with everyone watching.
Exactly. So let's get into it. Let's unpack that core narrative, how this whole reckoning really began. So the memoir, from what we understand, it doesn't really ease you in, does it? It kind of throws you straight into the deep end.
No subtlety there. It starts right at the devastating emotional heart of the story. That shocking catalyst, the moment that just detonated a 26-year marriage.
And set everything else in motion.
Precisely. And the scene she describes, it's more than just devastating. It's almost like an indictment of how things end sometimes now,
How so?
Well, the collapse of nearly 3 decades. Shared life, parenting, working together. It's all ended. Abruptly, not face-to-face, but through a voice message.
Wow.
In the middle of the night, telling her about her husband's long-term affair.
Oh my gosh, a voice message.
Yeah. That single, cold, digital fact. That's the trigger, the start of the chaos.
The psychological impact of just the delivery method alone, that's huge, isn't it?
It's brutal. It completely strips away any chance for a shared processing of the emotion. There's no conversation, no transition.
Finality.
Dropped on you. Exactly. Clinical finality. It instantly isolates her. She's alone in the middle of the night facing the end. It tells you right away this wasn't some gentle uncoupling. This was violent, immediate severance.
Yeah, that sets a stark tone.
It really does. And, while the divorce is obviously the inciting event, the book apparently makes it clear very quickly that the loss it's seismic. It goes way beyond just the marriage contract ending.
So it's bigger than the relationship itself.
Much bigger. This moment signifies the catastrophic collapse of, well, pretty much every pillar she used to define herself. Her identity as a wife, obviously, but also her family structure, her very carefully managed public persona as this faith leader, this stable mom.
Right, the whole image.
Her place in her community, her professional life, everything. And for someone with her kind of platform, the scale of that loss isn't just total, it's instantaneously public.
It's such a critical point. When your entire career, your brand really, is built on the image of a stable home, that humor, that grounded faith. When the central relationship implodes, it doesn't just end the marriage.
No.
It basically condemns the whole professional structure built on top of it. She wasn't just losing a partner, she was losing the, architectural integrity of her public life. It all came crashing down.
Which leads us right into her narrative choice, how she tells the story. It's apparently quite unusual.
How so?
The structure of Wake is deliberately fragmented. It seems to mirror a mind in crisis,
Yeah.
It avoids that clean, linear, this happened, then this happened kind of account.
Okay, so what does she do instead?
She presents the narrative as she calls it a kaleidoscope of moments, or vignettes. Little memory pieces that flash across almost 40 years of her life.
40 years, so going way back.
Yeah, childhood, marriage, parenting, her faith journey, her cultural identity. It's all woven together, not chronologically, but thematically, emotionally.
That description of kaleidoscope, that's really interesting. How does that nonlinear approach actually work for a story about crisis? Wouldn't people just want the facts, straight up?
Well, maybe intellectually, yeah, a linear story gives you that sense of order. But for a memoir about trauma, emotional authenticity is arguably much more important.
Right, because life isn't linear when it falls apart.
Exactly. When your world shatters, memories don't line up neatly in a row. They jump out at you. Intense fragments, like a sudden flash of something from childhood, some expectation you absorbed, or a moment of real joy from early in the marriage. Then maybe a harsh memory of cultural pressure you felt.
Okay, I see.
So by organizing the book this way, she kind of draws the reader into the chaos, into the feeling of grief, and into that messy, non-sequential process of trying to heal and make sense of it all.
So it's almost like she's doing this internal audit, revisiting all these past versions of herself, the kid, the young wife, the mom, the public speaker,
Yeah, trying to understand where the cracks started forming.
long before that final voice message landed. She's digging into the roots of her own identity, trying to figure out how she got there.
That's absolutely the core of this existential reckoning she seems to be going through in the book. She's forced to face this realization that the structure she relied on so heavily, her marriage, her specific faith framework, certain cultural beliefs, they were fundamentally more fragile than she'd ever let herself believe.
That's a terrifying thought.
It is. And so the process of rebuilding isn't just about moving on from the divorce. It's about fundamentally rethinking her relationship to external validation, to religious dogma, to her own self-image. It's inherently destabilizing, you know, but probably necessary.
The power then really lies in showing the messy, honest process itself, not just presenting some neat, finished product at the end.
Absolutely. The chaos is the message, in a way. It's about surviving the storm, not pretending it didn't happen.
Okay, so to really get the full weight of this crisis, we need to understand just how big Jen Hatmaker's platform was before all this happened. I mean, she's not exactly a private person writing a quiet little memoir.
No, definitely not. That recognition is key here. She is a major American author, a highly sought-after speaker. She has a huge podcast, a significant presence as a social influencer.
Her reach is considerable.
It really is. Her professional success isn't minor league stuff. We're talking 14 books published. 4 of those were New York Times bestsellers.
Wow, 4. That's impressive.
Yeah. And her podcast, For the Love,
Right.
it has this huge, really devoted audience. She built this powerful online community around her whole brand.
And critically, that brand, her public persona, it was always built on a deeply personal narrative, wasn't it?
Always. She was a mother of 5 kids, some adopted from Ethiopia. And that experience, that family life, really formed the bedrock of her storytelling. It was
Yeah.
all about family, faith, and living this kind of messy, beautiful, relatable life.
That image of the committed, funny, sort of down-to-earth Christian mom and community leader, that wasn't just part of her brand. It pretty much was her brand.
Exactly. And this is where the collapse becomes so impactful, so dramatic. Her public role was deeply, deeply entwined with a very specific, very high-profile part of American evangelical Christianity.
Right. She wasn't just adjacent to it. She was kind of a star within it.
For sure. Known for leading church projects, doing tons of public speaking, engaging in social activism, often framed through that faith lens.
Yeah.
But it's also true that in recent years, she had already started doing something risky within that world.
What was that?
She began to publicly, critically examine the rigidity of some of those same evangelical structures,
What?
questioning certain dogmas, social expectations, which didn't always go down well.
Oh, okay. So there was already some tension there, even before the marriage imploded.
Definitely. So what you have is this kind of double whammy hitting her. There's the private devastation of her marriage ending so brutally, but it's overlaid with the public dismantling of this persona that millions of her readers and followers kind of relied on for, moral and spiritual stability.
How does she even navigate that? The cognitive dissonance must have been immense, building a career on this image of the perfect, or at least stable Christian family, while behind the scenes it was secretly collapsing.
Well, that dissonance seems to be the absolute central tension driving the book. In that specific culture she was part of, particularly evangelical media, there's often this implicit, sometimes explicit, requirement for conformity.
Right, the pressure to present a perfect picture.
Exactly. The marriage has to be a model. The family has to look intact. The belief system needs to appear unwavering. And Hatmaker, in Awake, apparently uses the experience to explore the level of self-denial, the compromises she had to make over the years to keep that public structure standing.
That sounds painful.
It does. She talks about realizing that The scrutiny wasn't just coming from outside. The crisis forced her to turn that critical lens inward, to really dissect the dogmas, the expectations she might have just accepted, maybe passively, for decades.
It adds this whole other layer, doesn't it? It makes the book resonate beyond just the divorce story. It speaks to anyone who's ever felt trapped by cultural norms or religious rules or family expectations.
Precisely. It becomes this universal story of breaking free from an imposed identity, or at least questioning it deeply.
She's basically demonstrating in public, in real time, how you dismantle those structures, the ones that are comforting but also restrictive, without losing yourself completely.
Yeah, the book kind of functions as a, maybe not a guide, but a testament, a survival story for questioning your foundational beliefs without having to surrender hope or authenticity entirely.
And she grounds all this sort of abstract idea of collapse in a very physical symbol too, right? We know she lives near Austin, Texas,
Yeah.
in that farmhouse.
Yes, that classic old 1908 farmhouse. It's been such a recurring image in her work over the years.
What does it represent, do you think?
Well, it's the perfect metaphor, isn't it? It symbolizes groundedness, permanence, history, roots, but also that beautiful, sometimes chaotic energy of a big, busy family. It was like the visual anchor for her whole grounded but real-life narrative.
Okay, yeah.
So when the personal structure of the marriage collapses internally, the image of that sturdy, enduring old house still standing amidst all the devastation, it just perfectly illustrates that tension. The tension between what we build to last and what turns out to be surprisingly fragile.
The house stays, but the meaning of home has to be completely rewritten.
Exactly. It makes the loss feel even heavier. It transforms it from just a legal separation into this kind of architectural failure. A failure that demands a complete rebuild, right from the foundations up.
So the book then, it tracks not just her emotional journey, but also the symbolic reclaiming of that physical space, and ultimately reclaiming herself within it.
That seemed to be a major thread, rebuilding the self by redefining home.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk more about the writing itself. We mentioned the structure is fragmented, nonlinear, but how does that choice actually feel to read? Does it make the experience more authentic? And what makes this memoir stand out from others in that, life implosion genre?
Well, that fragmented style, using those memory pieces, it's really effective, I think, precisely because it rejects that conventional memoir arc. The one that demands neat closure or a simple cause and effect explanation for everything,
Right, life isn't usually that tidy.
especially not in crisis. So instead, this style captures the psychological reality of these huge emotional shifts. You get the slow, creeping realization maybe that things aren't right, interspersed with the sudden violent shock of the break itself.
So it mirrors the internal experience better.
Exactly. By prioritizing that emotional intensity over strict chronological order, she invites empathy from the reader, rather than, say, judgment or just a detached observation of events.
Yeah, I can see how that structure would help avoid the trap of self-pity, too. Sometimes memoirs about tragedy can feel like just a long list of complaints if they're told too chronologically.
That's a great point. It seems like the book manages to strike a really necessary balance of emotion. It definitely dives deep into the profoundly negative stuff, the paralyzing fear, the raw grief, the intense anger, shame, that crushing feeling of failure,
All the hard stuff.
all of it. But reviewers say it consistently counterbalances those moments with reflection, with her signature vulnerability, and crucially, with humor.
Ah, the humor. That's always been part of her brand.
Right. And here it seems to function as this essential survival mechanism. Often dark humor, maybe self-deprecating, but it gives the reader, and probably the author herself, these moments to just surface and breathe amidst the intensity.
That vulnerability, that's what always drew people to her work, I think. But it sounds like the reflection here is what gives Awake its real philosophical weight. It's not just her reporting on her misery.
Well,
It's analyzing why it happened, what it means for her, and maybe by extension for the reader, too.
and that brings us right to what seems to be the central thematic core of the book.
Yeah.
This idea of the midlife reckoning.
Okay.
This memoir lands squarely in that, terrifying but also potentially powerful phrase of life. And it asks that essential question: what does it actually mean to have to fundamentally reorient yourself when every certainty you built your life on in your 20s and 30s,
Yeah.
your marriage, your faith community, your professional path? What happens when those things prove to be fragile or maybe even entirely false?
It's that moment of maximum existential vulnerability, isn't it? The map you use for the first half of your life just dissolves in your hands.
Right.
And you realize you have to draw a completely new one for terrain you don't even recognize yet. And that applies to so many things. Career changes, spiritual shifts, sudden losses.
It's totally universal. The book seems to explore that feeling that all the effort you put in, maybe all the piety, all the conformity you adopted to guarantee stability,
Mm.
suddenly it yields nothing. Or worse, it contributed to the problem.
Oof. Yeah.
And the deeper, maybe more powerful question she seems to wrestle with is, how much of the person I built for the world, the person everyone saw, was the authentic me? And how much was just adaptation, compromise? How much was self-denial that I needed to maintain that specific structure, that marriage, that community?
That is a huge question, especially I think for women who are often culturally encouraged to suppress their own needs or desires for the sake of keeping the family unit or the community structure looking cohesive.
Yeah. Absolutely. She's seemingly forced to try and distinguish between the self she truly is underneath it all and the self she presented to keep that whole evangelical structure and the marriage within it standing.
It requires a brutal kind of honesty, doesn't it? To analyze how those small compromises over decades maybe metastasize into a kind of self-betrayal.
It does. And Hatmaker seems to confront that societal pressure, head on the pressure to maintain that image of seamless faith, perfect family, unwavering stability. And she reveals the severe cost of keeping up that performance.
So the narrative suggests that the collapse, while obviously devastating,
Yeah.
was potentially the only way she could actually find the self that was buried underneath all those layers of expectation.
That seems to be the implication,
Hmm.
that the breakdown was necessary for the breakthrough. And because the book apparently doesn't offer some quick fix or guarantee a neat happily ever after,
Right? No easy answers.
the path forward she lays out has to be more grounded, more earned.
So what does that look like in the book?
Well, it sounds like it provides a kind of blueprint for an earned optimism. It argues that things like remembrance, really deep mourning, even profound doubt, things that are often kind of shunned or rushed through, especially in some faith communities, are not obstacles to a new beginning. They're actually necessary parts of it.
Okay. So embracing the darkness is part of finding the light again.
Precisely. Awake seems to be about redefining your identity in the second half of life. Using the broken pieces, not to build walls of bitterness around yourself, but to construct something maybe smaller, maybe messier, but truer to who you are now.
It sounds like a journey from maybe forced certainty to embraced ambiguity, which in a way is kind of the definition of maturity in a complex world, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And that maturity, that hard-won wisdom, is what gives the book its power. It trades cheap comfort for necessary, difficult truth.
Okay, let's pivot now and look at how the book has actually been received out there in the world. Because the commercial success of Awake, right out of the gate, it seems to immediately validate just how necessary and timely this story is.
Oh, absolutely. This is the objective proof, isn't it? That people are actively looking for this specific voice, this specific kind of raw honesty right now.
So what does the initial market performance look like?
It's genuinely exceptional. It really speaks volumes about the size and engagement of her community, but also maybe a broader public appetite for this level of candor about life falling apart. The book debuted with phenomenal success, immediately signaling that readers were absolutely ready to follow her through this really painful public reckoning.
Let's get specific. Talk about the bestsellers rank, because that tells us about its appeal beyond just her core audience.
Exactly. Awaken immediately soared into the overall top 100 list for books, fiction, nonfiction, everything. It landed at hashtag 17 in books.
Number 17 overall. Wow. That's huge visibility for a memoir.
It's staggering, really. But then when you dig into the specific categories, that's where you really understand why it's hitting so hard.
Okay, tell us.
The book is ranked hashtag 1 in divorce
Books. Number 1 in divorce. Okay.
and also hashtag 1 in women's biographies
Number 1 in 2 major categories.
simultaneously. And it's also sitting at hashtag 2 in memoirs books, which is incredibly competitive. Achieving that number 1 spot in 2 different significant categories tells us something really critical about how people are actually using this book.
It's not just being read as like a celebrity tell-all or a straightforward autobiography then.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Its dominance in the divorce category confirms that readers are taking her intensely personal story and using it almost as a companion guide, a roadmap for processing their own loss, navigating separation, trying to reclaim their identity after a marriage ends.
That makes sense.
And then at the same time, its number 1 ranking in women's biographies highlights its importance as a commentary on contemporary female identity. challenging those cultural pressures placed on women in public life, in faith communities, within the family.
So that duality, personal story, and broader commentary makes it a real powerhouse in nonfiction.
Absolutely. The commercial success is directly linked to its deep thematic relevance. But, beyond just the sales figures, the emotional connection readers are making, that's best seen in the customer reviews.
Right, the social proof. What's the feedback telling us there? What's the emotional payoff for readers?
Well, the social proof is incredibly strong. The book has achieved a really high rating, 4.9 out of 5 stars.
4.9, that's almost perfect.
Exactly. Based on, at the time we checked, 237 initial reviews. That kind of near unanimous praise demonstrates that the book is really delivering on that promise of authenticity without sacrificing, readability or quality.
What kind of language are people using in those reviews? What phrases keep popping up?
The language is remarkably consistent, actually. Readers are calling it emotionally compelling and thought-provoking. That phrase comes up a lot.
Okay.
They also frequently describe the reading experience as heartbreaking yet beautiful, which perfectly mirrors that blend of raw grief and emerging wisdom we were just talking about. Readers clearly recognize and value that delicate balance she strikes.
I also saw some comments praising how she maintains her distinct voice, even through the devastation, people calling the memoir honest, witty, and full of wisdom.
Yes, that confirms that even in the midst of recounting terrible things, her signature style, that mix of vulnerability and humor, it provides necessary moments of lightness, and it makes the difficult material accessible.
That makes sense.
And maybe the most poignant feedback, I thought, was one customer who explicitly called it a must-read for those who have experienced grief.
Wow.
That really confirms the book's function, doesn't it? It's acting as a companion for people weathering life's really big upheavals. That intense vulnerability she shows, it isn't off-putting to readers. It seems to be precisely what people who are struggling need to feel seen, to feel less alone.
So the market is basically shouting that this is the kind of honest reckoning they were waiting for. The numbers, the reviews, they all point to a profound impact.
Yeah, the data absolutely confirms the emotional connection.
Okay, so we've looked at the story, the author's context, the writing style, the market reaction. Let's try and synthesize all that. Who is the ideal reader for Awake? Who should really pick this book up?
Well, fundamentally, if you are a reader who has ever experienced one of those seismic shifts in your life,
Yeah.
a moment or maybe a whole season where the ground just abruptly disappeared from under you,
Yeah.
and you were left questioning absolutely everything you thought you knew. This book is speaking directly to that experience.
No.
It tackles sudden loss, identity crisis, that long, winding, nonlinear path of recovery, all with what sounds like profound insight.
So it's definitely for people who crave emotional depth, people who aren't looking for easy answers or simple comfort.
Exactly. This is for the reader who is willing, maybe even needs, to grapple with those big, difficult questions. Questions about, inherited beliefs versus authentic identity, about the real purpose of faith structures or community expectations. It demands engagement. It's not a passive read.
It also sounds like it's for people who appreciate literary nonfiction that really stays with them. You know, those books that kind of reverberate long after you finish the last page?
Yes. The ones that spark reflection on your own life, your own choices, your compromises, maybe your own hidden certainties you haven't examined yet.
And just on a practical level, it sounds like if you know someone who is going through a major life transition, maybe a divorce, a faith shift, a career upheaval, any kind of big reassessment, Awake could be an incredibly powerful, really understanding gift.
A gift that says, I see you, and you're not alone in the mess.
Precisely. Now, we also need to set the right expectations. This sounds like a powerful, potentially demanding read. So what should listeners know before they decide to purchase? What are the sort of caveats?
Okay, good point. First and foremost, you need to be prepared for intimacy. This book is intensely personal. It's very interior-focused. Hatmaker invites you deep inside her emotional landscape, her psychological processing.
So if you prefer memoirs that keep more emotional distance or focus mainly on external events, this might feel a bit too much, too exposed.
You might, yeah. Secondly, just to reinforce the point about structure.
Yeah.
It is nonlinear. It's experiential. Don't pick this up expecting a strict chronological how I got through it manual or a typical self-help guide with like 5 easy steps to closure.
It's about immersing yourself in the complexity, not getting a simplified version.
Exactly. It mirrors the messy reality. And finally, just be aware, the themes are heavy. The subject matter deals directly with adultery, a profound crisis of faith, grappling with deep depression, the feeling of public failure.
Right. It doesn't shy away.
No. But Reviewers stress these heavy themes are handled with immense power, with vulnerability, and ultimately with wisdom. You just need to be ready to engage with that weight, knowing that the reward is this kind of radical, profound truth about resilience and rebuilding.
Okay, so our final synthesis on Awake. A memoir is basically this. It feels like a really necessary book for our times, a significant cultural artifact almost.
I think so.
It takes the reader right through the darkest parts, the shock, the total loss, the paralyzing doubt. But crucially, it provides this essential model for how you might steer yourself anew after something like that, rather than just settling into bitterness or resignation.
Yeah, it fundamentally challenges that pervasive cultural myth, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The myth that our stability comes solely from external structures,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's a perfect marriage or a rigid faith system or career success.
Right.
Hatmaker powerfully shows how the very things we thought were supporting us can sometimes be the things that were actually holding us captive.
That's a powerful takeaway.
It is, and the book seems to leave the reader with this single, burning, really provocative question to carry forward. When everything you carefully built falls away, what is truly left inside you? What is the core that can actually sustain your future?
It sounds like a message of hope then, but a really hard-earned, honest hope?
Exactly. Hope that's forged in the fire, not just wished for. Brutally, honestly earned.
It really does sound like a defining work for the modern midlife memoir genre. I suspect people will be talking about this one for years to come.
I completely agree. It feels significant. Hashtag tag outro.
So, based on all of this, we strongly recommend you check out Awake, a memoir by Jen Hatmaker. It's 320 pages of what sounds like necessary, raw, courageous honesty.
It's published by Avid Reader Press, which is an imprint of Simon & Schuster, and the publication date to mark down is September 23, 2025.
And remember those impressive rankings we talked about debuting at hashtag 17 in books overall.
And hitting hashtag 1 in both the divorce category and women's biographies, that tells you just how much this book is connecting with readers right now, how essential this message feels.
So if you're ready to pick up your copy, to begin that profound, challenging, but ultimately hopeful journey with Jen Hatmaker.
The link to purchase the book can be found directly in the video description right below this podcast.
It's right there for you.
Megan, thank you so much for exploring this really personal and powerful memoir with us today. It feels like an important one.
It really does. It was a pleasure, Rain, as always.
And to all of you listening, we warmly invite you to join us again for the next podcast episode of What's Hot in the Bookstore.
We'll see you next time. Take care.